Okay, my name's Sonnie Bailey from Fairhaven Wealth and author of the New Zealand Wealth and Risk blog. And the purpose of this video is to demonstrate that if you're young and you're not engaged with Kiwisaver, for example, you're in the default Kiwisaver fund that you were first placed into, you're probably doing yourself a disservice in relation to your long-term retirement outcomes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run through a hypothetical scenario of someone who's aged 40, and I'm going to take them through to the age of 67. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a few assumptions and model that out and show what the potential ramifications of staying in the default fund versus perhaps investing a little more aggressively, which far and away is the most appropriate approach for someone who is a long way away from retirement. So we're going to assume that this 40-year-old starts with an opening Kiwisaver balance of $35,000. We'll assume that this 40-year-old is making contributions every year. Let's say their salary is $70,000. We'll multiply that by 6%. 3% contribution made by them, 3% contribution made by their employer. We'll make it really straightforward. I'm not worrying about tax or anything like that. And I'm also going to assume those contributions stay the same all the way through until they retire at age 67, which is when they're likely to be able to access their Kiwisaver funds. Now, Kiwisaver is great because you're likely to generate returns, maybe not every year, but over the course of a long period of time, it's likely that your returns, that your balance will increase without you doing anything, which is one of the fantastic things about investing. And then the closing balance at each year is going to be the sum of the opening balance plus the contributions plus the returns you make. That means the opening balance of 1 year is the closing balance of the previous one. I'll just drag that down. Now, with respect to returns, we can't forecast the future, and trying to guess what returns are going to be is a sucker's game, really. We can extrapolate, and for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to just set a fixed average return that's going to be adjusted for inflation and after tax. Now, there's no way of guaranteeing what the future will hold, but it is important to make some assumptions when illustrating and creating a model like this. So I'm just going to say that let returns of, say, 3% per year. So what I do is I take the opening balance of a given year and multiply it by that 3%. Drag that down for the rest of this period, and then I'll bring the closing figure down, and this figure here that I'm circling is the balance at when they turn 67. I'll just turn that into dollar figures just to make it easier to see. So what you can see here is based on these assumptions, an opening balance of $35,000 in Kiwisaver at the age of 40, contributions of $4,200 per year, and returns each year based on the opening balance of 3%. We're looking at a Kiwisaver balance at age 67 of just under $250,000, which really isn't that bad. It's better than a kick in the face, that's for sure. So I'm just going to write that down for our reference. But what I want to point out is that if you are in a default fund, then you're going to be invested in what's referred to as a balanced portfolio. Now, a balanced portfolio is great for people based on certain circumstances, needs and objectives, but for someone who's looking at retirement and using funds for 27 or several decades years several decades in the future, that's unlikely to be the best way of investing money. It's much more likely that it's going to be appropriate to invest more aggressively. When you invest in a more aggressive portfolio, you will have more volatility, which means you'll have more ups and downs, and the chance of losing money in any given year is going to be higher. However, historically, it's very much been the case that investing in a more aggressive manner, especially over a long period of decades, you're much more likely to get a high return on your investment. So what I want to do is, again, illustrative only. Let's see what would happen if the returns increased to, say, 5% by investing more aggressively. And the figure now goes to $360,000. So if we look at 5%, 360,281, the difference between those two figures, it's well over 100,000. That difference is really profound, and so it really does illustrate that it's worth being engaged with your Kiwisaver and just giving some thought, at the very minimum, to how your Kiwisaver funds are invested. There are other things to consider, including which provider. My prejudice is that the lower fees you pay, the better, and also just making sure that the tax rate that your Kiwisaver funds are taxed at can also make a difference. But if there's one thing I hope you take away from this video, is that you really should be looking at how your funds are invested, because even what might seem like a small difference, a difference in 2% in returns, can really lead to a profound difference in your long-term retirement outcomes.